So, plenty of good football on show in the opening weekend, but one game that wasn't so easy on the eye was Aston Villa against Newcastle, where the biggest talking point was the absent Alexander Isak. Mark, you've written a column about this. I remember Roy Keane saying, if you want loyalty, get a dog. Is that how you feel about this situation?
Well, pretty much. I mean, look, the way that Alexander Isak has behaved this summer, I don't think it serves him well, does it? There's a sour taste in what's happened there. He's not actually come out and said anything, but it's fairly obvious that he doesn't want to stay at Newcastle. He wants to go to Liverpool. But I just think the way that he's conducted himself is not great. But ultimately, loyalty in football is not a thing. You know, you could say, well, he's not being very loyal to Newcastle, but let's be honest. He signed for the club 3 years ago. In that time, he's helped them qualify for the Champions League twice. He's helped them win the first trophy for 70 years, scored a lot of goals, elevated himself to a level that Newcastle haven't been able to keep up pace with. And, you know, look at Newcastle's transfer dealings the last 2 or 3 windows. They haven't basically matched his ambition, I guess. So he's probably thinking, well, I've taken my game to another level. The club hasn't kept pace, so I want to go somewhere else and realise my potential as a player. And, you know, let's be honest, if you're with a chance of playing for Liverpool right now, you've got a chance of winning everything this season. So I don't blame Isak for wanting to go to Liverpool. I do blame him for the way he's acting, but ultimately, loyalty doesn't matter because look at Man United. Rasmus Højlund is on his way out. He doesn't want to leave, but United have said, well, you know, you're not good enough for us. We want to get some money for you, so on your way. So where does loyalty go? Raheem Sterling at Chelsea last year didn't want to leave. He committed to the club for, I think, 5 years. Said, no, you're not part of our plans. Off you go. So, you know, footballers have a short career. Loyalty is what fans talk about. They get the tattoos. They say that a player who plays for the club, they should live and die for the badge. Well, it doesn't quite work like that. Football's a business. But the way that business has been done so far isn't great. But I just feel sorry for Eddie Howe because, you know, we've all dealt with managers in situations like this where a player wants to leave or they want to sign a player and they lie. Some managers lie and they kind of fob you off with answers that, you know, aren't true. I mean, I think Mikel Arteta's brilliant at it. I think Arne Slot's very good at dealing with questions like this. But Eddie Howe's been too honest. He's basically worn his heart on his sleeve. He looks really let down, really disappointed by the situation, but he's given too much away. I mean, I remember a classic case with Sir Alex Ferguson when they were trying to sign Robin van Persie at Man United back in 2012. And we had weeks and weeks of speculation. United denied. And we were in Cape Town in a press conference before a game on a pre-season tour. And 5 minutes before the press conference started, the Man United website put a story out saying Man United have bid for Robin van Persie, but the bid has been rejected. So we thought, fantastic, great line. We put it to Ferguson in his press conference, and he said, no, we're not interested in Van Persie. Nothing happening there. We said, so Alex, you've just put it on your club website that you want Robin van Persie, and like the flick of a light switch, yeah, he's a great player. Hopefully we can get something done. So some managers have to play the game a bit different than Eddie Howe is playing at the moment. But, you know, feel sorry for the guy, but it's football. He knows the business. Alexander Isak knows the business, and I imagine by the time the window closes, he'll be a Liverpool player.
The situation reminds me a little bit of Harry Kane, actually. In that, you know, obviously Isak signed a 6-year deal. That's the mistake he made.
Yeah, too long.
And it's exactly what Kane did in 2018. He signed a 6-year contract before that World Cup, by the way, in which he went to win the Golden Boot. So he might well have ended up with a more lucrative deal if he waited a couple of months. But that deal meant that when Kane tried to get out of Spurs the first time, he couldn't do it because the club were in such a strong position. And Rob, I mean, do you think really? I mean, think about Chelsea here, who've got players on 6, 7, 8, 9-year deals. But is the mistake that Isak's made is signing that 6-year contract? You know, there's been a lot of focus on his agent and the way that they've gone about trying to get him out of the club this summer. But actually, if you trace it back to that deal, should a player really ever be signing a 6-year contract if they've got the potential to become what Isak's become, or can we only say that with hindsight?
Well, I mean, the players do it because they want financial security, and they know that at any given moment they could have an injury that will end their careers, and then no one's going to want to sign them ever again. So you can understand players wanting to sign these big long deals, but they can't have it both ways. You can't sit down with the club and say, I'm going to take your 6 or 7 year deal because I want that financial security. But actually, if I do really well for 2 years, I want you to let me go really quickly and really smoothly because actually I want to play for another club and you know, get paid more money and win bigger trophies. You can't really have it both ways. And I think I'm surprised actually that there's not a release clause in Isak's deal. And I think that you're going to find going forward that there will be more release clauses included in these contracts, because it gives players the security of the long contract, but also the kind of the power over their own futures. And they had this with Man United a couple of years ago, where Paul Pogba was at Man United, and his agent Mino Raiola at the time was really annoyed in different summers that he just couldn't get United to let Pogba go. That United said, well, there's no release clause. If no one matches our valuation, then he's staying put, and Paul Pogba didn't really want to be there. And actually, in the end, there were times where Raiola with different clients wouldn't deal with clubs unless they put release clauses in contracts, because he wanted the power to decide what the next move was. So when it came to different players, he wanted a £50 million release clause, because he knew that if another club came and hit that mark, then the club would have to accept, and then he would be free to then negotiate with that club. So I think that the Isak thing is a really tough situation now for Newcastle, and Mark has hit the nail on the head. You feel really, really sorry for Eddie Howe, because really he's caught in the crossfire. He didn't negotiate the deal with Isak. He's not sat on the board deciding what kind of valuation needs to be met before Isak is allowed to go. And ultimately, he's now shorn of his best player for a really crucial part of the season to make sure you get off to a decent start, and doesn't know whether you're going to have his best player for the rest of the season. Is he going to go in 2 weeks? Is he going to have the money to spend to invest in someone to replace him? It's a really difficult situation, and I don't know what Isak is thinking, really, because he must have an end game in mind. He must understand that if Newcastle don't accept a bid, he's either going to have to sit on the sidelines for an entire season and just not play, or at some stage reintegrate himself into the Newcastle squad. And I know for a fact that Newcastle probably is one of the hardest clubs to do that as a football play, given the passionate fan base up there. I really don't know what happens from this point. I think it's a really, really tough situation for Newcastle and how to handle it. And they'll feel like they're being backed into a corner. And at some stage, you're going to have to probably accept an offer that they just don't want to accept.
I mean, the irony in all this is that the player that they're looking at to possibly replace Alexander Isak is Johan Visser at Brentford, who is not wanting to play at the moment. His head's not right because he wants to go to Newcastle. So it's just the hypocrisy of it all, isn't it? There's just, look at Mark Way at Crystal Palace. He's made it clear that he's happy to stay until the end of the season. Club captain, won the FA Cup with them last season. But the chairman, Steve Parish, is saying it won't be a problem for us if he goes on a free transfer next year. So, maybe try and sell him now. So loyalty it's a two-way street in football, but it depends which side of it you're on. Robin Van Persie obviously left Arsenal, has been vilified by their fans ever since. You can't really win, but, I know, James, I know you've got a point to make on Isak, so, far away.
Well, it's just to add a bit of context. I was speaking to a source who's very plugged into the market and recruitment, and he was telling me that there are multiple agents involved in this situation. And that's actually complicated the problem, because I think one of the agents involved with Isak has kind of promised that this deal would happen and it would be smooth and this is what you need to do to get out. And from what I'm told, a couple of the other agents who were involved in this were a little bit more, not sure it's going to be that straightforward. And I think what he's done is he's listened to an influential voice that's maybe promised more than they could deliver. Now, of course, the deal could end up happening, but where we are really is a stalemate at the moment, which is where Liverpool have put in a bid. And I thought it was quite interesting at the time that when that bid got rejected, it was very, very quickly briefed that they weren't going to bid again. And that was effectively passing the baton over to Isak, the player himself, to say, right, you're going to have to kick up as much of a fuss as you can here to effectively lower your valuation to something closer to where we think, we're prepared to pay. Now, obviously, he's done that. And but Newcastle have so far shown no interest in being in negotiating, coming back to the table. So Liverpool haven't put in a second offer. Now, the way to resolve this is for Liverpool to just pay the money. Now they might obviously not want to do that. They clearly feel 140, 150 is too much, and it is a huge amount of money for a player who, let's not forget, is brilliant, but is not guaranteed to be able to play 3 games a week for 10 months of the season. He has had a checkered injury problem in the past. Newcastle have had to manage that. And so you're not getting a player. It's not like when Arsenal bought Declan Rice, for example, when they paid that kind of money and they knew he had the tireless engine. He never gets injured. He's going to be able to play time after time after time after time. So I can understand why Liverpool it's not even lowballing. I just think they feel he's not quite worth as much as Newcastle do. But we've got to a point now where Liverpool if they want to make this deal happen, they have to come back to the table at a higher level. Now, whether they come in at, I don't know, 120, 125, maybe more money is guaranteed rather than add-ons. I think they have to. I think Isak can't do any more than he already has. So clearly, the baton was passed to him at one stage to say, "Look, you need to help. You need to help make this happen." He's done that, for better or for worse. That is what he's done. The ball is really now back in Liverpool's court, I think, to make an improved offer and to end this, because this sort of stalemate really isn't actually good for anyone. It's not good for Isak. It's clearly not good for Newcastle. And actually, it's not great for Liverpool because they're now into the season. They've obviously lost any kind of pre-season time to be able to work with him. They're going to have to try and integrate him as they're going along, which, of course, they're already doing with several other players. So it's not a sort of settled setup for Liverpool, this, and it's not really ideal for them either.
Conveniently enough, Newcastle's first home game of the season next Monday is against Liverpool. So I imagine that once that game is out of the way next Monday night, I think the Isak deal will probably accelerate. I can't imagine Isak signing for Liverpool before they play at St James's Park. That will be a little bit too much intensity before the game, but I think it'll happen. I'm not sure Liverpool need him right now. I think what they're doing is trying to kind of replace Mo Salah at some point. Salah, Firmino, Mane. Once they get Isak, Ekitike and Wirtz together, that could be their forward line for the next 5-6 years. But right now, guys, James, Rob, do you think that Liverpool need Alexander Isak?
Well, the thing is, yes, they do, because they've lost players at the top end of the pitch, tragically, obviously in one case, but also they've allowed Luis Diaz to leave and Darwin Núñez to go as well. And Isak is clearly an upgrade on both of those two. And I think, elite number nines are so rare these days in football that you can't really sort of pass your nose up at the opportunity to be able to get one in. And you've got a situation here where there is a number, it's a big number, but it's not a million miles away from where Liverpool are, that they can pay to get in somebody who, there's no guarantee, I suppose, of goals, but he's as close as you're going to get as somebody who will just come in and virtually guarantee 20, 25 goals a season. And he's entering the prime years of his career. The boost it would give the fans, the squad, the club as a whole, I just think it's a deal they have to get done. They'll be clear favourites to win the league if they're not already. And yeah, if I was a Liverpool executive, as I say, I think the onus is on them now to complete the deal, to up their offer and get it done.
And I think in terms of what the squad needs right now, you could probably make the case that they're in more need of a centre half or even a defensive midfield player. But I think James is right that sometimes these things come up and you don't get another chance to do it. And Isak really, in terms of number nines around the world, is probably about as perfect a fit for Liverpool as you can get. He's had a couple of years in the Premier League, has been highly successful in the Premier League, knows how to score goals in the league. There isn't anyone else in the running for his signature because most of the clubs have done their business. United have signed a centre forward, Chelsea have signed two, Arsenal have signed their centre forward. In theory, they've got a clear run at him if they can come up with the money to meet Newcastle's valuation. If you wait a year, you never really know what's going to happen. Maybe there's another club that comes in and wants to sign him. Maybe there's a bit more competition. Maybe the price is even higher in 12 months. I think the way that Liverpool have operated in this window has suggested that they have got quite a clear long-term plan for how they want the squad to look at the end of this window, the next summer window, and even probably the window beyond that. And I think just because these opportunities to sign elite number nines don't come around very often, that they're probably thinking that it's really now or never for Isak. That if they're going to do it, it's got to be in this summer, even though, financially it'll be quite painful to do that and possibly Mark Gahey in the next sort of 2 weeks before the deadline.